Let's take a look at section 1-2, Powers and Exponents. First of all, let's talk about our question. Our essential question is, why is it helpful to write numbers in different ways? Over this chapter, we're going to look at the reasons why that will be helpful. So let's look at writing and evaluating powers. First of all, a product of repeated factors can be expressed as a power, that is, using an exponent and a base. So let's highlight our vocabulary here. Power, exponent, base. Let's look at an example. We've got 2 times 2 times 2 times 2. In this example, we have 4 factors. Remember that factors are numbers that are multiplied together to get a product. We can write that using exponents by writing 2 to the 4th power. So 4 is the exponent. And remember that exponent tells us how many times the base is used as a factor. And then 2 is our base. And we've talked about this before in doing our math minutes, that when we multiply these, then the base stays the same. So the base is just the common factor. All right, powers are read in a certain way, and you guys have gone over this before, so this is nothing new. 3 to the first power means 3. 3 to the second power, or 3 squared, is 3 times 3. 3 to the third power, or 3 cubed, is 3 times 3 times 3. 3 to the fourth power, or 3 to the fourth, is 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. And down at the bottom, it might be a little bit confusing to see 3 to the nth power, but that just means that it goes on and on and on. We could do 3 to the 5th power, 3 to the 6th power, so n could be any number, and that would just tell us how many times we multiply 3 by itself. So let's look at a couple of examples. This should be very easy for you. We've done this many times, and this is not the first year you've done it. So let's take a look at this. -2 times -2 times -2 times -2 times 3 times 3 times 3 times 3 is going to be -2 to the 4th times 3 to the 4th. The next example is a times b times b times a times b. We're going to put them in alphabetical order, so a to the second, or a squared, times b to the third. Now notice we did not put a multiplication symbol between these two. We don't need to do that when it's just variables. However, we do need to do it when it is numbers. Also notice that the -2 is in parentheses. So take just a minute and pause the video and do the practice problems, writing each expression using exponents, and then come back and we'll continue with the lesson. All right, you've had a few minutes to work your practice problems, so let's look at the next key concept, and that is evaluating powers. We have -2/3 to the 4th power. So we would write this -2/3 times -2/3 times -2/3 times -2/3. And then to evaluate it, we're going to multiply straight across on the numerators and the denominators. So 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 is 16. Now let's think about it. We've got a negative times a negative, that becomes a positive. We multiply by another negative, it becomes a negative. We multiply by another negative, it becomes a positive. So our answer will be positive. Remember that we talked about earlier that if you have an even number of negatives, then your answer is positive. Here we have 4 negatives, which makes our answer positive. And then we multiply our 3's, so 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27, times 3 is 81. So our answer is going to be 16 over 81. The next example, 4 to the 4th power, 4 times 4 times 4 times 4. And when we evaluate 4 times 4 times 4 times 4, we get 4 times 4 is 16, times 4 is 64, times 4 is 256. Take a minute, pause the video, and do the 2 practice problems at the bottom of the page. When you're finished, come back and we'll continue with the lesson. Okay, now that you've had some time to work those problems, let's take a look at the next example. It says the deck of a skateboard has an area of about 2 to the 5th power times 7 square inches. What is the area of the skateboard deck? Well, what we need to do is evaluate 2 to the 5th times 7. So 2 to the 5th is going to be 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, and then times 7. When we evaluate our 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, we're going to get 32. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, times 2 is 32. 32 times 7, then, is going to be 224. So the skateboard deck has an area of 224 square inches. Take just a minute and work the practice problem that follows this problem. It says a school basketball court has an area of 2 to the 3rd times 3 times 5 to the 2nd times 7 square feet. What is the area of a school basketball court? Work the problem. It's very similar to the one above it, and then come back and we'll finish the lesson. Okay, now that you've completed the problem above, let's look at the next key concept, evaluating expressions. And in this example, we're going to evaluate each expression if A equals 3 and B equals 5. Again, this is not anything new for us. It's just basically a review. So we're going to substitute 3 for A because it says A equals 3, and 5 for B because B equals 5. And then we're going to evaluate. So we get 3 times 3 plus 5 times 5 times 5 times 5. And we know that 3 times 3 is 9. That one's easy. 5 times 5 times 5 times 5, though, you may have to figure that out. 5 times 5 is 25, times 5 is 225, times 5 is 625. So when we add 9 plus 625, we're going to get 634. The next one, we have the difference of A minus B squared. So they're both in parentheses, so we know we're going to square the entire quantity. So we have A is 3 minus B is 5 squared. 3 minus 5, at this point we should know, is negative 2. Negative 2 times negative 2, then, is negative 2 squared is negative 2 times negative 2, and negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. Now that we've finished the lesson, finish the 3 practice problems at the bottom, and then bring your notes back tomorrow so that we can review the lesson, make sure that you understood what we were supposed to be doing, and if you have any questions, we can answer them.